So you want me to just jump in?
Yeah, please, because it's recording now.
Should I start with socks?
Oh, please. Yes, I forgot. Yes, I actually thought of it like 5 minutes ago, and then we got caught up in your office. So,
Oh, you
I
know
can
what?
only
That's true.
focus on one thing,
Okay,
ADHD.
so I've gotten to a point where I just take them off now. But so
Yes.
this sock is a kind of a continuation of last time. So Scott, I was like excited. I was teasing Scott about these ones that were coming up.
Okay.
Because the last one I think was like a squash, like a yellow squash.
Okay.
And so and it said on the bottom, it said living life on the veg. And I
Oh,
seriously
wow.
have no idea where these socks came from, except that my wife gets them. So this one,
Yes.
has
Oh, it's radishes,
radishes,
peas,
peas,
eggplant.
eggplant, and okay. And then at the very bottom, and it's not going to be visible, so I'm just going to tell you guys. Oh, maybe you can see it.
Mm-mm.
Okay, it says, I like big plants and I cannot lie.
Okay. Okay. I don't even know where to go with that. So
Well, Sir
I
Mix-a-Lot
like
from
I
the
like big plants. I
I
I
like
have
big
fake
plants and I
plants.
cannot lie.
Well, I have my husband won't let me buy more plants because he goes, "Why do you want to subject another plant to death?" I have the proverbial brown thumb. My sister can grow, my mother can grow, but I like so I have faux plants in my house because otherwise I've got a couple of plants that I actually have somehow managed to not kill, but yeah, I love plants. I like the botanical garden, but they don't thrive under my care. So
Oh yeah. No. Oh, you know what? If you haven't been there, it's far east side for you. But there's a place called the Boyce Thompson Arboretum.
been there. Yes.
No way.
Yes.
Okay, so I was just there, hiked around the whole thing yesterday, and I've been there a few times before, but I was like, if you love plants, isn't that place amazing?
It is. It is. And we both live in Arizona, and pardon that, but we both live in Arizona, and people have a misperception of it. Like right now, like the desert is starting to bloom. It's going to be gorgeous for the next, few weeks for sure. But it's just beautiful. And I was out walking today, and there was a roadrunner that ran in front of my dog and me, so he went nuts. But like the stuff that we get to see out here is just, it's so different than where I grew up in the Midwest. But I'm grateful for all of the diversity, of all the different states and all the different places, and I've
Oh,
had the
totally.
ability to travel. I find it fascinating to learn about things, but like you, appreciate the beauty of the desert.
Oh, totally. Okay, so here's where we're going today. We're going to talk about blame. And I have mixed feelings about blame, and here's why. Blame in and of itself is like yuck, right? And it happens a lot in relationships. And I mean, in its purest form, oh, good, we got a question that came in. Keep sending questions in. We'll jump in there. But in its purest form, like when you look at like blame is I'm not willing to take accountability, and I'm going to put the accountability onto someone else, something else, anywhere but me. And it's kind of like when I have a similar feeling about gaslighting. And what I mean by that is, yes, I think gaslighting is that same like gross feeling of a lack of accountability. And gaslighting in its truest form is like, I'm going to make you feel crazy so that you get off my back, right? And so, and blame is like, I'm not going to take accountability. I'm not going to take ownership, and I'm going to figure out who I can make accountable. Now, the problem is this, just like gaslighting, I don't know that gaslighting occurs intentionally and so, all the time. It occurs intentionally plenty of times. But what I mean, sorry, I misspoke there. I think sometimes it occurs unintentionally. And I wonder if blame let me rephrase this. I see all the time when I'm working with my couples that blame occurs regularly unintentionally. And so how it happens is, let's say you ask me a question about why I was late. And so I start to say, well, or you may not even ask me a question. You'll say, I'm really angry that you're late. Okay. And I respond and say, you know what? Traffic's bad and you don't have to drive as far as I do. And, I was busy at work. And okay, now I'm not suggesting that that's healthy, the way I'm responding, but I might be unhealthy in how I'm responding, but I'm not actually trying to blame. I'm trying to explain myself. Now, it may not be a very good way of explaining myself, but I see this all the time. Somebody gets defensive, somebody feels attacked, and what they're really saying deep down inside is, I don't feel heard, I don't feel understood. And so I'm going to explain myself so that you get off my back and stop beating me up so that I don't feel shame. So that I don't feel embarrassed. And you're going to hear it as I'm not taking accountability. Now, I think one wonderful way to I'd not say get past this, is you can actually stop someone and say, hang on, are you trying to tell me that you're not accountable for being late? Right? Like, is that what you're trying to tell me? And because I want to find out, like, and if they're like, no, I'm not accountable for being late, it's not my fault, then I'm like, okay, they're blaming. Like, does that make sense? Like, and so you want to like lean in. And if they're like, well, no, I'm trying to explain to you why I was late. Okay. You can explain it to me, but can you also own it? Like that, hey, I didn't prepare well enough for traffic. Right? If I tell you, you know what, honestly, I didn't expect traffic to be as bad as it was. I didn't prepare well enough. I told you I'd be home on time, or I told you I'd be there on time and I wasn't. And so that's my bad because I didn't prepare. And so I was late and I'm sorry. But man, it was super frustrating for me because I was trying so hard to be on time. Okay, now we're having a conversation. And so I guess I throw it out there because there's a difference between somebody blaming and feeling like somebody's blaming, right? That's where we have to get curious and lean in and start to ask some questions. We want to figure out, are you being accountable and you just aren't good at it? Like, does that make sense? Or are you trying to tell me it's your fault or or somebody else's fault? Because so often, if we could stop a conversation and say, hold on, the way you're responding makes it sound like you don't feel heard. The way you're responding makes it sound like you don't feel understood. Is that what's happening right now? Right? So slowing it down, getting curious, asking questions can often help us get to the root of like, what is this behavior? Blaming? Do you feel misunderstood? And then I love it if you can go further and say, do you realize though, when you explain yourself that way, it sounds like you're telling me you don't have any accountability? Do you realize when you say it this way, this is what it sounds like? Right? Like, because I'm taking accountability for how I'm hearing it. And I'm asking you, is that your intention? And we get down into intentions. And that's the part that gets tricky, right? You're gaslighting me. Well, am I doing it intentionally or am I doing it unintentionally? Am I blaming you intentionally? Am I not intentionally, unintentionally or intentionally? So anyway, that was confusing. So anyway, Tammy, what do you like? Do you have any like thoughts on this? Anything we should jump into?
Well, I do, yeah, because I find when somebody starts out, you don't understand, like it's that immediate defensive, and it's not going to go well, But taking the accountability of like, yeah, I was late. There is a reason. I'm happy to tell you or not, but I'm sorry. I mean, like there's a way to shift it, but the deflection, I underline deflect, because
Oh yeah.
it's like it's that automatic pushback. that defensiveness, but automatic pushback. And yes, it could be intentional or unintentional. I think, these are skills that, well, first of all, gaslighting and blame shifting, I think addicts are masters at, but to learn
Oh,
to take ownership of is something that they are, in pre-kindergarten, they just don't have the tools to be able to do it, and to be able to have the bandwidth to stop and like think, is the next thing out of my mouth going to be helpful or not helpful? I think the being curious, helps take it away from being, like you can stop the process of even unintentional blaming, if you just slow things down a bit and think it through is, and it's hard because I think we are so reactive and so quick to to push away, like I don't want I don't want blame for any of that, not my fault.
and
Well,
I love what
maybe.
you're saying there, because people often ask me questions like, how do I change? How do we change this? Right? As a couple, how do we change this? And I swear to you, like what you just said is exactly it. You have to learn to slow down. Don't react. And the way that I've said it before is figure out what you're reacting to before you react. A simple technique is really breathe. And I've told people before, like, you aren't allowed to respond to your spouse until you check your pulse, feel 5 heartbeats, and breathe, right? And then go, okay, so if I'm hearing you, like, come up with a system where you force yourselves to slow down. Now, not slow down so much that we just sit in silence,
No.
but if we can slow down and start to figure out, okay, what's going on here? Why is this happening?
Yeah, well, and even
So
with the
important.
example you use, the late, what is that really about? It's about the trust, but if it's here in my reactive brain rather than in, oh, let me think about what is going on. And oh, and I had told you that when I'm, if I'm going to be late, I'm going to text you and let you know, or what, I
Mhm.
mean, like there's going to be and I didn't do any of those. Well, then, you have the right to, to wonder, what I was up to during it. So, but when we're so quick to react, we're not thinking any of that through, and it doesn't help. I talk often about the negative two-step. I think, couples get into this negative two-step dance where, you do this and then I do this and then you do this and I do this. And it's just like, and it's these repeating patterns, until somebody is able to go, wait, and you kind of, I love the, take a, have a technique. And if it's 5, heartbeats,
Right.
if it's breathing, I mean, what is it you need to do to settle, for a second, what I hear you saying is, like any of those things that take it out of, I'm preparing my next retort, I'm preparing my line of defense, and I am hearing you, that starts to shift things in a positive way, which if the point of healing ourselves and the relationship, to move forward, we have to do something different.
Yep. I I try, and one of the things I emphasize with my couples is that the single most important aspect of any relationship is trust. If you don't have honesty, you don't have a relationship, right? Because you're not sure of what is really even happening. And that's why when there's a lack of honesty or there's intentional gaslighting or whatever else, like the partner feels crazy, because they can't make sense of the world. They can't make sense of what's real, what's not real. And so when you get into this slowing things down, it's realizing how critical accountability is. And so it's like, man, I'm not going to respond until I figure out how to own my part of this. Okay, what is my part of this? Okay, my part is, you know what, I am late. Like, the truth is I'm late, right? And then it's, okay, so what was going on? Well, I didn't leave early enough, right? Okay, what else? Well, I can own that I feel sad that me being late makes you not trust me, or not, or feel insecure, right? Like you start to figure out what's all the stuff I can own. And the more stuff you can own, the more safety, the more honesty, blame disappears. Accountability destroys a lack of trust. So being accountable is so critical. And even if you've got to just slow down and go, okay, right now, that's all I'm going to focus on is what can I own here?
Yeah, yeah. But that's the part of like, I'm going to do something different. That is one piece of I'm going to do something different because I want a different outcome. Oh, my glasses. They're not on top of my head. Okay. So first question. Recovering Sex and Love Addict here, CSAT group sponsored in 12-step. I haven't been perfect. Welcome to humanity, but I do feel progress. Communication with my wife continues to be challenging. Surprisingly, I have feelings. I can so relate. As I practice getting out of my own head, I want to better understand her feelings. She says, I feel, but it reads more like I think, i.e., I feel that you're going to act out on your screens at night. I try to empathize, I'm sorry. So I ask questions. When I do, my curiosity is met with annoyance and anger. Why do I have such a hard time hearing her?
Oh man.
There's a lot of good stuff in there.
Oh my gosh, right? So I'm gonna jump straight to why do I have such a hard time hearing her? For most people that I've worked with, you are in a position where you want to repair, you care about her, and you feel bad for the mistakes you've made, and you're trying to improve. And so a lot of times in your position, you're having a really hard time hearing her because your fear is coming up. Like you're recognizing in these moments, oh, this is a key moment, time to respond, time to show up. And like that fear comes up, and you could call it anxiety, nervousness comes up, and you're like, okay, all right, this is it. I can feel it. But you're so potentially concerned that like you have to do it right, that it's okay, ask questions, get curious, right? You're like trying to figure out what the right step is. So it's really hard to hear and listen what's going on underneath when your fear is kicking in, or maybe even your shame is kicking in. So that might be one reason why you're having a hard time hearing her. But I'll give you a couple of tips. So a lot of us, the way we speak is we say to people, I feel, I'll ask somebody, how does it make you feel? I feel like you are angry at me. I feel like you, right? And it's like that is a statement, that is a judgment, that is a thought. It is not a feeling. And now she is telling you her feelings. In the question that you wrote, it reads more like, I feel you are going to act out on your screens at night. Okay. She's telling you her feeling, but you have to look for it. You have to hear it. So one of the things you can do in this situation is say, okay, if I had a partner who could act out on their screens at night, what emotion would I be feeling? Right. And so it's one of those pausing moments. Okay. So if my partner had betrayed me and could act out on their screens at night, what emotion am I feeling? Oh, she's probably feeling fear. So then I say, oh, it sounds like you're feeling fear. And then it's always best to lean in and validate. And it sounds funny, but I tell people, don't try to take their fear away. Try to lean in and like validate it. Well, you should be afraid. And this blows people away. They're like, what? And I'm like, yes, you should be afraid. With the mistakes I've made, that would be a very logical fear. Do you want to talk about some of the things that I'm doing that I think are helping me to not act out on my screens at night? Would that be helpful? And notice how I'm not explaining, I'm asking a question. Would you like me to talk about this? I can share more about it if that would be helpful. Or, you know what? I'm not, and I love this one too. I'm not sure how to help you with that fear. I think I'm doing good in this area, but I'm not sure what you might need to hear from me to help you with your fear. Right? Like be honest about what's there. And so those are a couple of tips that I think can help. But if I'm misunderstanding it, put another question in here, and let's explore it further. But I think I like that you're trying to empathize, and I like that you're asking questions. Oh, here's another one. When I do, my curiosity is met with annoyance or anger. I would stop right there. Hey, I'm confused. So use your emotion. I'm confused. It seems like my judgment is when I ask questions and I empathize and I get curious, you seem to be annoyed or respond with anger. Why is that? It doesn't make sense to me. Can you teach me? And so you use that moment to actually draw out more of her emotions. And besides that, you don't understand it. So you want to you can ask those questions. There was one other piece. Oh, the surprisingly, I have feelings. I've found it's really interesting as those who are recovering, early on, they often don't even know what their feelings are. And so they don't get used to expressing emotions. And then as they get further into recovery and they start to figure out what their emotions are and they start to express them, sometimes they do a poor job expressing emotions. Sometimes they do a good job of expressing emotions, and it's really scary for the partner. The partner is not used to it. Even though they've been craving it for so long, the partner's freaking out like, what? You're not allowed to have emotions. You're the one that hurt me. And it's like, actually, if we're going to have a healthy relationship, I need to process all of my emotions, even if they don't seem rational to you, even if you don't think I should be allowed to have feelings because I made all these mistakes. So those are just a couple of thoughts. Tammy, anything I'm missing, or we should?
No, I think that was great. The feelings though, we as addicts misperceive that if we are acting out, we are just shutting down the negative feelings. But what we don't understand is we've shut down all of the feelings. I remember early in recovery, I think it was my sponsor said, "What are you feeling?" And I said, "I don't know. I'm feeling, and it's intense, and I hate it. I hated it." And it didn't matter if it was a good feeling or a bad feeling. It was so much because I was so emotionally shut down.
Oh yeah.
That changed, but having the ability, I did. The fear was when I read this, I feel like you're going to act out tonight. I was like, oh, there's fear.
Yeah.
So figuring out what it really is. But I think you gave some very practical. Here's how you can navigate that. But being willing to continue to show up, good for you. And it is like if you're waiting to get perfect, you're going to wait forever. Like
Oh
that's
yeah.
like that. Thank goodness, I have the 12-step program, and I don't have to make amends as often as I used to, thank goodness, but I still have to, and thank goodness I have the tools to be able to do that, and I'm quick to use them because I don't want to feel that negative stuff. So it isn't like, oh, we magically arrive and we're all perfect. It's like, wow, we at least have the ability and the tools to do life on life's terms and not continue to cause more hurt and pain. So, well, we will on some level, but we have the ability to clean it up. So, okay. My husband withheld information that he really should have shared. I found out. I gave him the opportunity to tell me, but he didn't. So I asked him if he ever planned to tell me about X. His response was, "You are going to find out anyway, and it wasn't a lie. I just didn't tell you." I wish I could slow down the way you describe. It's so hard not react. Trauma, hypervigilance makes it all so hard. No disclosure yet, 10 months post D-Day. He sees a CSAT once a week for the last 4 months, doesn't like meetings, did the SA 101 course. I'm frustrated and so tired. How can I slow down when I'm so triggered? This feels like the same behaviors as when he was doing what he used to. It unfortunately sounds like it too. So
All right.
I'm sorry.
No, totally. Let me jump in here and say, when I'm talking on here, I'm trying to teach the ideal. Like I'm trying to teach like, hey, here's what we're all striving for. But like, let me just tell you, like I have trauma responses, and there are many times if I have a trauma response, I'm a disaster. Like, and so I need to just like what I'm trying to throw you is a little empathy and validation here that like, look, that was going to sound so arrogant. So I'm going to tell you that what I'm going to say is going to sound arrogant. I'm really good at this stuff and I'm still a disaster sometimes, right? Like, meaning sometimes I blow it. And the key is, even when I overreact, like I've told this story before, but like it was the coolest thing. We were out camping once and I was with my kids and I was really frustrated. I asked for their help on something and on probably several things. And then I blew up. And then later I came back and I was talking to him. I said, guys, I'm really sorry. I shouldn't have reacted that way. And my oldest, it was my two oldest, had told me, Dad, it's okay. We know when you overreact, you'll come back and apologize. We know it's not about us. And I was embarrassed and proud. Like, because I'm embarrassed that, one, I have a big enough pattern there that my kids are seeing me screw up regularly. But I'm proud because I'm teaching them not to own my crap. And so why I say that is, it's okay, be a mess, but you own it. And in this question, you are owning it. How do you learn to slow down like I'm talking about? It's practice. So I've gotten a lot better with my kids. And I forgot to close the tab and it's making noise. I've gotten a lot better with my kids on this stuff. And I still have occasion where I lose my crap, like, and I overreact. The key is accountability, right? It still comes back to accountability. In fact, I wonder sometimes if it's better that my kids still, and my kids and my wife and my friends still see that I blow it and that I know how to recover. And so please be good to yourself. Use compassion here. I don't know if it's possible to completely eliminate any and all reactions that are poor. The key, I think, is learning how to just come back and be accountable about it. So, but I'm going to go back to, first of all, his response is, I'm going to put this lightly, very concerning to me. For him to suggest, I didn't tell you because, and you were going to find out anyway, so it's not a lie. That is a load of garbage. I didn't tell you because you were going to find out anyway. And I was too scared to tell you. And I would have rather you found out, and probably part of me might have hoped that you never found out, right? Like, I don't know what is actually going on. If he's healthy, he says, yeah, I didn't want you to ever find out. I'm too embarrassed. I'm too ashamed. I don't know how to change this or whatever. That's him taking accountability. But the truth is, that is not okay. His response. I think you already know that. And so I won't spend a whole lot more time on it. How do you slow down in a situation like that? I think you might want to like pre-plan. I'm going to approach him. I want to ask him a really hard question. No matter what his response, I'm going to say, okay, thank you. And I'm going to walk away and I'm going to call some friends, right? But like, the way we learn to react differently is training ourselves in the way that we want to react. You are not going to learn to react different if you don't come up with a plan ahead of time. I've said this before on here. I remember one time, I think I said this before on here. I remember one time I got so mad at one of my kids and I had an amount of rage within me that I have never felt towards my children. And I literally walked out of the house because I knew that if I didn't leave right then, some of what had happened to me as a kid, abusive or whatever, emotional abuse, physical abuse, like I knew I had to leave right then. And my phone didn't hardly have a charge. And I literally walked out. I think I had shoes on. I'm not even sure. And I walked for like 3.5 hours. My wife texts me, "Are you okay?" No, I am not, but I'm working it out. I'll be home when I'm okay. Like, because my wife's like, what the heck? Where are you? What just happened? And she wasn't afraid to tell me, hey, you're overreacting. And I'm like, you're right, I am. And so if you don't have a plan, that's where all of us react poorly. I have to have a plan. Tammy has to have a plan. Everybody needs plans. And so if you start thinking ahead of time, even asking friends, hey, I'm going to approach my partner. I'm going to talk about this thing. I'm going to go to my boss and ask for a raise, whatever it is, have a plan. If you have a plan, you're less likely to react poorly. I'm trying to think if there's anything else on this question. No disclosure yet. 10 months. That's rough. Sometimes, to be honest, if I'm working with somebody who hasn't done a disclosure for 10 months, sometimes it's because, to be honest, they aren't ready. They aren't honest enough to give a disclosure. And it sucks for a betrayed partner. But the truth is, judging by his response, he's not honest yet enough to give you a full disclosure. You should be frustrated and tired. That sounds really frustrating and tiring. And then I think, and it says it feels like the same behaviors. Well, in some sense, it probably does. They probably are the same behaviors. He's probably struggling to figure out recovery. I hope he continues to go, and I hope he continues to get it. But man, you're in a rough spot. I hope that helps.
Yeah, everything you said, and the analogy of the dry drunk, the alcoholic that stops drinking but doesn't change any of the behaviors. That's what I read here. So, checking off a few boxes, doing a few things, but yeah, the so hurtful to go, yeah, you're going to find out anyway. When we talk about like the 24-hour rule or even less, to come clean with things, it is a lie. Even if it's a lie of omission, it's still a lie. And he does not sound committed to rebuilding trust. So I'm going to lean into, what do you need to do for your healthy boundaries? He already is telling you by his actions that he is not fully engaging in a process that will lead him down a recovery path. So what do you need to do for your physical safety, emotional safety, financial safety, spiritual safety? It's about, I value me, because he isn't and can't apparently at this point. So what do you need to do to take care of you? So it's not punitive. You didn't do this, so therefore, or you did this, so therefore. It's like, like Matt said, okay, thank you. I'm going to take care of me as and I don't know if it's a, therapeutic separation. I don't know if it's like, I'm going to go, I'm going to go meet with my girlfriends. I'm going to go to my support group. I'm going to do whatever because I need to take care of me. I'm going to be less available for you because you are not leaning into the space where we can build trust and build a relationship. But 100% agree with Matt too, that, I would not want a disclosure with a man who is like, well, you're going to find out anyway. That will be a disclosure fraught with minimizations. There'll be massive things left out. If the point of the only point, in my opinion, of a disclosure is to set a foundation for moving the relationship forward, so
with honesty,
with
setting the
honesty,
foundation to move the relationship forward with honesty and like full transparency. And so that there have been times where I've said, look, if you can't commit to do that, then don't do a disclosure. In fact, tell your spouse, I don't plan to live in an honest relationship, so that they can figure out what in the world they're going to do.
Yeah.
At least be honest about not being honest.
Do any of them actually do that?
What? Be honest about not being honest?
Yeah.
I actually have had.
Wow,
yeah.
that's fascinating. I'm
Oh,
going
yeah,
like, I
like,
wonder if they can actually do that.
Well, yeah, like, hey, I'm not willing. I'm not saying it's the most common thing ever, but yes,
No.
I have had it happen where it's like, look, and this is the other thing I've said, don't share a disclosure don't do a disclosure as a couple unless you plan on actually at least being willing to see if the relationship can move forward, right? Sometimes a disclosure is not helpful if you guys aren't wanting to work out the relationship. Like, don't do it just because you feel you deserve to have a disclosure. It's like, if you're not staying in the relationship, move on. Like,
right. And unfortunately, there's a misperception that, well, once I get disclosure, then I'm going to know, and then my healing can start. And I'm like, your healing can start regardless, because you can set healthy boundaries, you can get support, you can do those things regardless of what he and she just for ease. But, regardless of what the addict is doing or not doing, you can, there's lots of addicts that never get this. And you know what? There's a lot of partners that still find, joy and, have a solid, stable life, regardless of what, that person is choosing to do or not do, so they aren't like, well, once disclosure, then we're gonna, magically be all better, and he's gonna be magically honest. No, this is hard stuff. So, okay, next question. What can a betrayed partner do if their partner has agreed to steps to help the betrayed partner feel more safe, i.e., screen time, passcode, no personal accounts on work laptop, but then removes those steps? Whoa.
Yeah. This is a tough one. I love the question though, because I see this happen so often. Here's how I would approach it. I'd lean in to try and figure out, hey, we had talked about this being something that we had agreed upon, and you're removing it. Can you help me understand why you're removing it? Right? Like, try to understand what's going on for them. Right. And sometimes it's like, well, I'm tired of feeling like a child. Okay, I don't blame you. I imagine it does feel like you're a child, and I'm the parent, and I don't want to be in that type of a relationship either. Right. I don't want to be the overlord of your recovery. But at the same time, I can appreciate from a betrayed partner's perspective why it's like, I need to feel like I have some semblance of like the safety here, like, that I can look at your phone, you can look at mine, right? Like, so what can you do? You really have to figure out how high is your need. And what I mean by this, and this is kind of a tough one, like what you can do, well, you can't force them, right? Like, and even if you feel like you could force them, if they're adamant, then they'll go get a burner phone or something else, right? Like, that's the hard part, is that I've had partners will say, this is my boundary. Like, you must do this thing. And what you're really saying is, I need honesty. And then if you're not willing to be honest, now is that, what can you do? I don't know. What do you need to do? Can you be in a relationship where you don't have full transparency? If you can't, what are you going to do? You're going to leave the relationship? Right? The struggle that betrayed partners run into is, it's almost like, well, how can I force them? You can't. And in fact, don't try to play that game where, well, fine, I'm moving out. No, you're not moving. You're going to move out because you feel that that's what you need most in your life. You're not moving out to try and force their hand, right? That's super unhealthy for both of you. Don't ever, as a betrayed partner, set a boundary that isn't about you taking care of your need. So too many times a partner will ask me this question, what can I do? And really my response is, what do you need to do? Right? Like, if you're not willing to do anything, or you don't find what you need to do, then really you can't do anything. But if you say, you know what, I don't feel comfortable living in a home with somebody who's not willing to be transparent. Okay, so then are you going to move out? But again, if you move out, it's because that's what you need, not because you're trying to prove a point or force their hand. So there really, you can do lots of things. Why don't you ask, what is it that you need? Because what they're doing is they're violating the relational agreement. And so then you ask yourself that question. Our relational agreement was that you were going to do these things, and now that you violated them, here's what's happening for me, and here's what I'm going to need to do to take care of myself. So really tough question, because every human being is going to be different in this response. And
Yeah,
it all comes down to what your needs are.
Yeah, and that's the challenge with healthy boundaries. It's like, what do you need? I mean, physical violence aside, like no, seriously, that is an absolute. Everybody should have that on their list. Of like, that's a hard boundary, no physical violence, but
Correct.
but as as everything else. So if I say, but Matt, what I need is for you to go to 12 step and to go, that's what I need. If you say, what do you need? I need you to do all of these things.
And that's where I push back and I say, no, you don't need me to go to 12 step. What you need is to feel like to feel like you have some idea that I'm making an effort in recovery. Because if you don't feel like I'm making an effort in recovery, then you're scared. But the truth is, I can go to 12 step to make you feel safe and still be acting out like crazy, right? Like me going to 12 step really doesn't do anything to make you feel safe. However, let's have a conversation. I am willing to go to 12 step. I'm willing to even talk to you about what I learned in 12 step. I'm willing to tell you what I've learned from my sponsor, because I want to provide for you an understanding of what's going on in my inner world, because I care about you, right? Like, but somebody who's struggling with addiction, learning how to do that, they're just going to hear, here's all the steps you need to do to make me happy. And the problem is that it doesn't work that way, right? Like I can do everything on your list and still be a really unhealthy individual and treat you poorly. And then you're going to feel a little confused and crazy. Well, you are doing everything I asked you to do. How come it's not working? Because that's not what you needed. What you need is safety. What you need is transparency. I mean, I can go to the needs list. Let me pull up the needs list.
Oh, let me make sure that you can share. I will make you
I'm going to pull up a needs list real fast here.
I'm making you a co-host so you can.
Okay, yeah. Where is my needs list? And I'm going to go, I mean, we could really talk about all of our needs. Oh, that is not working. I love it when my systems changed slightly when I moved to my new office. And so little things like I didn't have the background downloaded, or so it's just kind of funny because I'm like, oh, I need to develop a better system for this.
You will. You'll get
You're right,
no,
I will.
you will find everything and you'll get it all organized in a way that's workable. So
Yeah.
and you'll give yourself the grace to figure it out. So it's all good.
Oh no, totally. Okay.
Here we go.
Can you see it?
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Basic self needs by category. Yes.
Okay, so when we look at categories, you have your physical needs, my need for nutrition, exercise, human touch, sleep, hygiene, right? Physical is the one that everybody seems to understand really well, right? I need water,
Mm-hmm.
I need shelter, I need human touch. Emotional, I need self-awareness, self-worth, self-esteem, play, curiosity, creativity, right? There's so many that go in here. If you notice, everything under emotional has to do with myself, like it's within myself. The only category that deals with another person is going to be the relational category: vulnerability, emotional connection, intimacy, honesty, trust. Okay, so if I say, hey, I need to be I need honesty, right? So right now it feels like you're struggling to be honest. It would really help me if you allowed me access to your phone so that I could see what's going on, right? And the truth is, you can give me access to your phone and still hide stuff, right? And so the giving access to the phone is not a need. Going to 12 step is not a need, but it might allow us to increase the intimacy and honesty relational need, or it might give me an understanding of boundaries and respect, right? Like you start looking at what your actual needs are. All these behaviors that I'm going to stop sharing this. All these behaviors that I'm asking you to do go to 12 step, check in slips within 12 hours, right? All these behaviors aren't actual needs, they're tools. And these tools help get needs met, right? The therapeutic disclosure, it's not a need, it's a tool. And that tool might give us the ability to connect better. In fact, the research shows is I think it's over 90% of couples will say that it was a very beneficial tool. But the truth is, all these tools can actually cause more problems too, depending on how they're used. Or even if they're used well, they can cause problems. So learning how to be careful not to misunderstand needs from requests or needs from behaviors that I'm asking you to do. If I ask you to share with me what's on your phone, that is a tool that may help me feel more trust and help me feel more safety. But at the same time, you may still not be honest. So it's kind of one of those, hopefully that makes sense.
Well, it does. And I thought it was interesting because I talk about financial safety because I talk to so many partners who don't have financial safety, and
Oh
that may be
yeah.
part of the whole relational, aspect. But they're, I mean, I think I've talked to 3 in the last week where the finances have just been destroyed by the acting out. So I always talk about how do you set up your financial safety, as part of that. But to what you were saying, like we had a client that came to treatment. This was a few years ago, but he had been lying to his therapist for 11 years. Now he'd been going to his therapist. So his partner was, he's trying, he's going to his therapist and all of this, but he'd been lying to his, that's the record that I know of so far. I'm sure
Oh
somebody can beat that,
no,
but
that's a
that's a long
solid
time.
record. Whoa. I mean, I've been in practice. It's 11 years. That's
It
how long I've
was,
been
yeah,
in
it was.
practice.
Yeah, but he came to treatment. Things gratefully shifted. He was willing to be honest that he'd been lying to
Yeah.
his therapist for 11
And
years,
and that's beautiful, right? Because then it's like, what over the course of 11 years, was there some of that treatment that was helpful, even if he was lying, right? Like it's a tough thing. This is brutal.
Well, yeah, and and even if they are going to meetings, I talk often, people go warm a seat. I shared a couple months ago, I was in my personal 12 step and somebody talked about being a 1, 2, 3, 12 stepper. They didn't do any of the steps in the meat of the program. They didn't do the steps. They did 1,
Oh,
2, and
like
3, and then they did service work.
they do the first 3 steps over and over. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, they did the first 3 steps and then they did service work. And guess what? They relapsed. Big shock. I mean, and they've been
Oh.
around a while, because, and I mean, this person, and I won't say anything more about, but this person, but
You're
they said I did 1, 2, 3, 12. And I was like, I hadn't heard that before. So it kind of caught, and I was like, oh,
oh,
so I didn't do 4 through 9, which are the real work. That's where we start to, you got to do the work, and then 10, 11, and 12 are the maintenance steps, just going to, I'm going to do service because like
yeah.
you're skipping all the stuff, but you know what? He never really had real recovery. Never really had. You don't get the benefits if you don't put in the work. You don't get the benefits of it. So on some, it's challenging because it does feel sometimes like they have to check off boxes, and they do. That's showing action, but it's also leaning into, like Matt was saying, it's leaning into the work, not just warming a seat.
And I would argue in the beginning of recovery, it's actually pretty normal that it's a checkbox approach. Like there, because it's like, okay, what do I have to do?
Yeah.
And it's in the process of checking the boxes that heart shift or mind shift can actually happen. I mean, when I teach when I teach like safe language, like how to be vulnerable and validate your partner, I will tell people, and I'll tell spouses like betrayed partners, I'll be like, it's gonna sound robotic because it is, right? They if they don't know how to do it, it's going to be robotic as they figure it out. And so that same principle occurs in recovery. If I don't know how to do recovery, I'm going to go through the motions and be robotic until I actually figure it out and become healthy. And so, like, the truth is, in the beginning of recovery, and you have to ask yourself, what's the beginning? Is 10 months still the beginning? Well, for some people it might be. And is it going to be robotic? Is it going to be not wholehearted? Yeah, probably. Like, however many months it takes, like, at what point does that shift occur? And I'll tell people, so I'll try and ask this question. If your spouse left today, would you keep doing recovery? If your spouse
Oh,
left,
that's a good one.
yeah, if your spouse left today, would you keep coming to therapy? Like, ask yourself that question. If your answer is no, then I don't mean this in a bad way. You're not in it, right? Like, you haven't had the shift, you haven't had the change. And it's interesting. I had people that I would be doing like recovery groups with, like the therapeutic groups, and they'd be in there 2 years, and next thing you know, for whatever reason, and man, I had guys that truly were sober, and their partner divorces them for whatever reason, and I would always watch, and the people who are like, hey, you know what, I'm good for now, and I'm like, you aren't finishing your program. Like, I wouldn't say that, but in my mind, I'd be like, ooh, that may tell us exactly where you're at, right? Unless you can show me what your plan is moving forward. If you're just bouncing from your program, like your treatment plan that's been set up because your spouse has left you, man, that makes me nervous. But if you're going to continue to do recovery, even though your spouse leaves you, then you're not doing this just for your spouse anymore. You're doing this because you've figured this out.
Well,
So
and you want to bet, yeah, you can't have, I just said to somebody earlier today, if I could wave a magic wand and people could see how good it could be if they were willing to do the work, they'd be doing cartwheels to get, they honestly, because they
but
would
they
go,
feel
oh,
hopeless.
but in addiction, it's like we're so focused down on, I got to hang on to this little tiny thing. It is the smallest aspect of life, but we're so afraid to give that up. And we're missing, like we talked at the beginning of this about how amazing the vistas are in Arizona. So we're missing it because we're like, no, I have to just, I have to keep my head down, and, I have to hang on to this at all costs. And we've had guys come to our treatment program too that have gone, I didn't have to lose my first relationship if I had just gotten the help, done the work, but now they've got wreckage through multiple relationships because they didn't shift. So when you're talking about somebody who is just there to appease a spouse or whatever, because there's negative consequences within a relationship, you hope they stay around long enough to figure it out and go, wait, now I've shifted and now I'm doing it for myself. We always worry too when somebody goes, yeah, I got this, if they're leaving treatment, we go, they don't got this, like that's, yeah, I've been around a while. I don't pretend, like I have a daily reprieve. I have today, I do the work I need to do today. And, my life is really good. So somebody asked about, will this recording be posted? Yes, all of the recordings are posted. If you go to the Seeking Integrity site on the homepage at the bottom, it will take you to the free resources, which is on sexandrelationshiphealing.com. So just go to Seeking Integrity. But then under the resource tab, you'll see the previously recorded webinars. And Matt's today's will be posted by Monday. It might not get on today, but
you guys usually you leave them on the website for about a week, and then they go to
no, it's
YouTube?
even longer. Yeah, no, they're on YouTube, but they fall off the page because we have so many
Oh,
webinars.
that's what
So
it
at the
is.
bottom of the page, you can go to see more, and then it'll take you to the bigger site. But on our website, you'll see the most recent.
Yeah.
But I'm often pointing people to, I even wrote down dates of like, oh, you'll see this one on, so because there's such great content. And so,
Oh yeah.
like I'll say, go see Matt Wheeler's on, but it's really
Yeah.
helpful to have those, on specific topics. Now, ideally, we would have a library where it'd all be categorized so you could search it, and because if it's depending on my memory, but I did, pull some specific links, of things. Okay. Does the webinar change? Oh, that's a great, yes, thank you for saying that. So the question is, does the webinar change This is the only one, because both Matt and Debbie are in Arizona, and so rather than doing it, later, we changed the time. So this is the only one. All the rest of them are Pacific time zone.
Because Arizona does not have a time zone change.
Correct.
This
We're
webinar
the smart
shift.
ones.
I think
I
so.
hate daylight savings time. It's like
so
all my relatives on the East Coast, it's 3 hours. It just makes a huge mess.
Yeah, so it's always 2:30 Arizona time. And
Correct.
so unfortunately that's gonna shift for people.
Yes. So this is the one. It is accurate. We've already, I think, or it will be, after today, it will be posted correctly for next week. But thank you for bringing that up. I forgot about that. Probably because I have a mental block that we have to deal with this, after Sunday. But that's me. Oops. So anyway, that's me. So any other questions? Yep, we got another question in here.
Nope, that was it.
Oh, I just didn't hit done. Okay. So thank you, Matt. Great to see you.
Good to see you too, Tammy.
I will come down and visit your office. I think that'd be fun.
Should.
So
I would
yeah,
love
I would
to have you.
Yeah. So I will do that. I'll make an outing. I will see. So check the schedules. There's lots of webinars and drop-in groups, etc. So check the schedules. Any questions, email me, Tammy, TAMI at seekingintegrity.com. We'll do our best to, get you pointed towards resources that are helpful for you. Bye, everybody.
See you, everybody.